Hello, my name is Helena, and 2 years ago, I paid for a party I wasn't invited to. It was my parents' wedding anniversary. I arranged every detail, covered every cost, quietly, lovingly, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me. Instead, my mother told me I was too dramatic. My sister claimed the gift I commissioned. They erased me from the guest list, then from the photos, and finally, from the family narrative. I sat alone in a cafe while my phone buzzed with 110 missed calls. What did they think I would do? Disappear forever? Or worse, stay silent? I was still in my work clothes when I heard the knock on my apartment door. The light outside was fading, a thin streak of Colorado sunset sliding across the hallway carpet. I hadn't expected visitors. When I opened the door and saw my mother standing there with that faint, rehearsed smile, I knew it wasn't a social call. She never came over without a reason. "Helena," she said, her voice clipped, as though she were arriving at a business meeting rather than her daughter's home. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd drop by." I stepped aside, letting her in, and immediately smelled her perfume, sharp, expensive, the kind she only wore to church or to important events. She sat on my sofa, smoothing her skirt with a hand that trembled slightly. We didn't talk about the weather or my job. She went straight to the point. "It's about the anniversary," she said, glancing around my living room as if looking for a flaw. "Your father and I have decided it's best if you don't come this year. It's not personal." I felt a small shock run through me, like cold water spilled on my hands. I had been expecting some version of this, but hearing it was different. I kept my voice even. "Not personal? You're asking your daughter not to come to her own parents' celebration? How could it be anything but personal?" She exhaled slowly, her eyes sliding away. "You know how you can be, Helena, a little dramatic. This is supposed to be a calm evening. We don't want any distractions." I bit back the first words that rose to my lips. Dramatic. That was her word for me whenever I spoke up, whenever I asked a question they didn't want to answer. I folded my hands in my lap, pressing my palms together until they hurt. "I see," I said, my tone neutral. Inside, though, the distance between us stretched like a canyon. She stood up, smoothing her skirt again, clearly eager to leave. "I'm sure you understand," she said lightly, as if she were talking about a minor scheduling conflict. "There just aren't enough seats for everyone. We had to make hard choices." I remembered the guest list from my own planning file. I had built in space for at least 15 more than the RSVP count. It wasn't a question of seating. It was something else, something deeper and more deliberate. "You've managed before," I said softly. "Why not this time?" "Please don't make this harder," she replied, her smile tightening. "You know how your sister likes to handle these things. Let's keep it simple. You'll get over it." Her words landed like a quiet slap. I walked her to the door, keeping my face calm. "Drive safe," I murmured. After she left, I stood at the window watching her car pull away, the tail lights fading into the spring dusk. My chest felt tight, but not with tears. I wasn't going to cry. I had learned long ago not to give her that satisfaction. I moved to my desk, switching on the lamp. The soft yellow light made the room look smaller, more private. I opened my laptop, the screen reflecting in the darkened window. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but didn't type. Instead, I picked up my phone and opened Instagram, scrolling through my sister Callista's page. There it was, a glossy story post with a photo of the event venue. The caption read, "Counting down the days," and tagged a cluster of people, family friends, old co-workers, even a woman I vaguely remembered from my father's retirement party. My name wasn't there. I kept scrolling. Another post, a rehearsal dinner with the hashtag #FamilyFirst. Faces smiling at a table I had chosen, a caterer I had booked, wine I had paid for. Callista had written, "Couldn't have done it without our amazing crew." I stared at the screen until the text blurred. I didn't smash the phone or throw it. Instead, I took a screenshot, then another. Every photo, every caption, saved into a folder. It was a habit I'd picked up years ago, documenting what people pretended not to do. My mind drifted back to a Thanksgiving long ago. Everyone gathered for the family portrait, Me still in the kitchen checking the last dish. When I came out, they were already done. "We'll take another later," my mother had said. They never did. In that picture on the mantel, it looks as though I never existed. I closed the app and set the phone face down. In the silence of my apartment, I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator. I walked to my bookshelf, pulling down the thick folder labeled Anniversary. Inside were the vendor contracts, payment confirmations, and emails, the architecture of a party no one had invited me to. I laid the papers on the desk, one by one. The deposits were all there: the caterer, the string quartet, the floral arrangements. My name at the bottom of each invoice. I stared at the signature until it didn't look like mine anymore. I pushed the papers back into the folder, closed it carefully, and sat very still. My hands were steady now. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a choice. They had decided to erase me from the event I had built for them. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. "So," I whispered to the empty room, the words tasting like iron. "I'm not even invited to the party I paid for?" I closed the folder, my fingers pressing against the cardboard until it bent. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. Somewhere across town, my mother was probably telling someone how mature she'd been, how she'd handled her difficult daughter. I reached for my phone again, not to call, but to look at the time. 2 weeks until the anniversary. 2 weeks to decide who I wanted to be in this story. Again, the silent helper, or something else entirely. I didn't leave my desk that night. The streetlights outside glowed dim behind the window blinds, and the soft hum of the heater filled the silence in the apartment. My laptop screen stayed on, illuminating the folder I had opened earlier, the one labeled Anniversary, Private. Inside it were every invoice, every vendor contract, and every confirmation email I had collected over the past 2 months. I scrolled through each document slowly, as if hoping some new explanation might leap off the screen and undo what I had just come to accept. The deposits had gone through under my shell account, the LLC I used for freelance event work, the florist, the quartet, the rental company. My name was nowhere visible to the guests, but every payment had come from me. I had arranged everything carefully, intentionally. I had wanted it to be a surprise, something generous, personal, maybe even healing. I used to believe that if I kept giving, eventually I would be seen. At the time, it had felt noble, quietly contributing, staying out of the spotlight. The good daughter, the reliable one, the peacekeeper. Now, it felt like I had volunteered to be invisible. My fingers hovered over the trackpad as a thought crept in. I could cancel it all. Just call each vendor, pull the plug. That would be easy. Would they call me dramatic for that too? I closed the laptop for a moment and leaned back in my chair. In the dim glow of the room, the framed photo of my parents sat on a shelf behind me, their faces smiling at a dinner party I had thrown for their 40th. No one had said thank you out loud that night either, but Callista had made a post the next day, captioned, "Another magical night." I hadn't even been tagged. I reopened the computer and refreshed my email. That's when I saw it, an automated forward from the venue. A standard courtesy update sent to all vendors and organizers. Attached to the message was a copy of the event schedule and a draft of the thank you speech. I clicked. The speech was in a document labeled Callista, Final Remarks. The tone was polished, sweet. Not polite, performative. Thank you to everyone who made tonight so special, to our vendors, the incredible team at the venue, and most of all to our family. My parents' marriage is a testament to resilience, and we are honored to celebrate them alongside people who truly know what loyalty looks like. The line sat on the screen like a slap. There was no mention of me, not a word, not one acknowledgement, not even a "we appreciate everyone's help." It wasn't an oversight, it was surgical, deliberate. I reread the paragraph again and again, each time feeling something inside me untether. I opened a new email draft, typed in Callista's address, wrote, "Please add my name to the list of acknowledgements. I funded this entire thing." Then I stared at it for a long time. I didn't send it. I deleted the draft. There was no point. She knew. They all knew. It wasn't about forgetting me. It was about pretending I had never mattered in the first place. I closed the laptop again and walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water I didn't want, then left it untouched on the counter. My mind raced back through the years. Birthdays I had planned. Father's retirement. That elaborate backyard brunch for Mom's 60th. In every photo, I was behind the scenes, holding a clipboard, checking a timeline, pouring wine. I wasn't in the pictures, not really. I was always in motion, useful, not celebrated, present, but peripheral. I reached for my phone and considered calling Jethro. My brother was the type who always said he didn't want to take sides, as if refusing to choose wasn't itself a choice. He'd say something like, "You know how Mom is, Helena. It's not worth getting into it." That phrase, "not worth getting into it," was the anthem of our family. Sweep it under the rug. Stay quiet. Don't be dramatic. I put the phone down. I didn't need comfort. I needed truth. And the truth was, this wasn't the first time. It was a pattern, a repeated choreography of exclusion dressed up as etiquette. This time, I wasn't going to dance to their tune. I turned back to the laptop and reopened the vendor folder. Just to be sure, I called the venue manager directly. He answered on the second ring. "Hi, this is Helena Roth. I'm calling about the Franklin anniversary event next week." "Oh, yes, hi, Helena. Everything's still on track. Is there anything we can assist you with?" I paused. If the deposit were to be canceled or pulled, would I get notified? A brief silence on the other end. "Yes, of course. You're still listed as the main contact and account holder. Any changes would come through you." I thanked him and ended the call. My hand rested on the mouse again, but I didn't move it. That was it. There was no backup payment, no transfer, no revision. They were planning a party with my money, my work, my name. And not only had they cut me out, they were actively rewriting the story to make it look like I'd never been involved. I sat still for a long time. Then, slowly, I opened a new folder on my desktop, named it Receipts, Do Not Touch, dragged everything inside, contracts, emails, screenshots, even the speech draft. I had no intention of sending it yet, but I wanted it ready, because sooner or later, someone was going to ask why I wasn't there. And when they did, I wasn't going to stay quiet. I stayed at my desk long after the phone call with the venue manager ended. The room was quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock and the low hum of my laptop's fan. Outside, the city had sunk into night, and the faint glow of downtown Denver pulsed against the blinds. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I kept the mug in my hands like a small anchor. I didn't even notice the new notification until the sound of my phone buzzed against the wood. It was a screenshot from Nora, my second cousin who lived out in Kansas and rarely texted me unless it was about some genealogy chart or family recipe. The image showed a post from Mom in the family circle group on Facebook. In it, Mom had written a little anecdote about that Christmas Eve years ago when Helena caused such a scene and ruined the night for everyone. There was a laughing emoji and a string of comments from relatives. "Oh yes, we remember that. Classic Helena." I stared at it, the glow of the screen bright and sharp in the dark. I remembered that night perfectly. My father had gone pale halfway through dinner. Everyone else was laughing over eggnog and old stories while he sat quietly clutching the edge of the table. I'd recognized the signs of his blood sugar crash and quietly taken him to the den, made him sit, called the on-call doctor, and waited with him until the ambulance came to check him out. I had left the house early that night after making sure he was stable. I hadn't caused a scene. I had prevented one. My stomach tightened, a slow coil of heat and disbelief rising under my ribs. This wasn't just exclusion anymore. It was rewriting history, turning me into a cautionary tale. The dramatic daughter, the problem, the one who ruins things. I unlocked my phone and opened the family group chat, the one I'd been in since the old days when group texts were still green bubbles. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard as I typed. That's not how it happened. I was the one who got Dad medical help that night. I hit send. The message didn't go through. A small red exclamation point popped up where the checkmark should be. I tried again. Same result. I backed out of the chat, scrolled up. The group wasn't even visible anymore. It had disappeared from my list entirely. For a moment, I thought it was a glitch. Then I realized they had removed me. I hadn't walked away. They had quietly closed the door, flipped the lock, and kept talking without me. My heart thudded hard, then steadied. A different kind of silence filled the apartment now, not empty, but solid, like a door sealing shut. I opened my laptop again and clicked on a folder I had named Family Events years ago. Inside were hundreds of files, spreadsheets for catering, playlists for parties, timelines, photos, texts I'd saved when someone actually thanked me. I started dragging them into the trash one by one. Birthday parties, retirement dinners, surprise brunches. All the nights I'd stayed up making sure things went smoothly, so Mom and Callista could glide in and smile like they'd arranged everything themselves. One by one, gone. I stopped at a single file, a scanned photo of my 6th birthday. Dad was kneeling beside me holding my hand, a cake with melting candles in front of us. I was half in the frame, off to the side, wearing a paper crown. I closed the trash folder and left only that photo on the screen. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from Instagram. I tapped it. Callista had posted a new video. The thumbnail was a montage of smiling faces at a rehearsal dinner. Mom, Jethro, aunts, uncles, even distant cousins. The caption read, "Family means everything, blessed." Everyone was tagged. Every vendor credited. I wasn't there. I wasn't tagged. Apparently, I wasn't part of everything. I set the phone down gently and pushed back from the desk, my chair rolling against the carpet. The apartment was utterly still. I could hear the faint rumble of the train tracks a block away. I stood up and went to the window, looked down at the street below. People walked past under the amber streetlights, arms linked against the cool spring night, cars slowing at the intersection, their headlights casting brief silver arcs on the asphalt. For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shocked anymore. I was awake. I reached for my phone again, opened my email, and started a new message. I didn't know who I would send it to yet, but I began to type out the facts. The payments, the contracts, the omissions, the erasures. If they wanted to pretend I had never existed, they were about to find out how thorough my records were. By the next morning, I was operating on muscle memory, checking my email, feeding the sourdough starter, watering the basil I didn't really care about anymore. There was a strange stillness inside me. Not numbness, not yet rage, just an eerie calm that let everything sink in like silt at the bottom of a lake. The day moved slowly. By late afternoon, I walked down to the cafe a few blocks from my place. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those quiet corners with cracked leather booths and baristas who remembered your order. I sat by the window, same as always, ordered my usual almond milk latte, and watched people pass by outside. Kids in hoodies, couples holding hands, delivery guys riding bikes like their lives depended on it. I was scrolling through a few old photos on my phone, weddings, baby showers, all events I had helped plan for other people, when a new message flashed across the screen. It was from an unknown number. The text read, "Can't wait to see you at the event. You were always the kindest teacher I had." I froze, thumb hovering in mid-air. My heart didn't race. It slowed. "Who is this?" I replied, though something in me already knew. The answer came quickly. "It's Indira. I was in your 10th grade lit class. I'm working the venue this weekend." I hadn't seen Indira in over a decade. She was sweet, bright, and used to sit in the front row with her hands always slightly ink-smudged from writing too fast. I remembered her essay on To Kill a Mockingbird, one of the few kids who actually understood nuance. I swallowed hard, then typed, "That's great to hear, Indira. Hope it's going well." I didn't tell her I wouldn't be there. I didn't correct the assumption. Because someone had clearly used my name to paint a picture. One where I was included, smiling in the background, just out of frame, but still conveniently useful. 15 minutes later, another message popped up. "Hope you don't mind me saying, but your mom was talking about you earlier. Not in the nicest way." I sat up straighter in the booth, my hand suddenly cold against the ceramic cup. "What do you mean?" I wrote. "I probably shouldn't have listened," she replied. "But I was in the staff room." She didn't know anyone else was around. Pause. Then a third message arrived. "I recorded a piece of it. You should hear it." For a second, I just stared. Then, with a deep breath, I typed, "Go ahead." A minute passed. Then the audio file came through. I plugged in my earbuds, pressed play. Valora's voice was unmistakable, clipped, precise, like she was dictating a letter she'd already memorized. She doesn't know how to behave in public. That's the thing about Helena. Always has to make it about her. We gave her the early invite so she wouldn't show up. It's better this way. A silence followed, broken by a half-laugh from someone in the background. My ears buzzed. I listened again. She doesn't know how to behave. Early invite. So she wouldn't show up. It wasn't just exclusion. It was manipulation. They never planned to include me. The little talk with Mom, the passive-aggressive, we just want a calm evening. The fake story about seating. It was all pretext. Carefully layered deceit, so when I didn't appear, they could tell themselves and others that I had chosen not to, that I had been invited, technically, and she'd said it out loud, with the arrogance of someone who assumed no one was listening. I sat there, earbuds still in, letting the last few seconds of audio repeat like an echo. A strange thing happened then, not anger, not tears, but something sharper. Clarity. I paid for my coffee, left the cafe, and walked slowly home, letting the chilly breeze tighten around my coat. The walk helped settle the static inside me. By the time I got home, the sun had dipped below the rooftops, and a gentle dusk wrapped itself around the quiet streets. Inside, I hung up my coat, fed the cat, and sat down at the desk. Then I opened a blank folder on my computer, named it, If They Force My Hand. Inside, I saved the audio file, then the speech draft from Callista, then my payment invoices. One by one, assembling the mosaic of my erasure and the proof of it. I wasn't collecting revenge. I was collecting truth. For the first time in a long time, I saw the whole picture. I saw the layers, the timelines, the effort that had gone into not just forgetting me, but replacing me with a narrative that served them better. The girl who was too emotional, the woman who didn't show up, the daughter who chose distance. I had played my part for too long, quietly, diligently, obediently. I had smiled through omissions. I had organized, supported, and stepped aside. No more. I opened my email and drafted a message to Indira. Thank you for sharing that with me. It means more than I can say. I'm going to ask something important. Can I trust you to be discreet for a few more days? I hit send. Then I leaned back in my chair and stared at the wall, my mind both blank and burning at once. I wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. The morning after I saved that voice recording, I went about my routine like everything was normal. Shower, coffee, email. I answered a few messages from clients and sent off a timeline for an unrelated project just to ground myself in something that had nothing to do with family. But everything I did felt like I was just moving pieces on a board, waiting for the next move I already knew they'd make. Later that day, while I was reviewing a contract for an upcoming spring wedding, a new message from Indira slid across my screen. No greeting this time, just a photo. The image loaded slowly, piece by piece. It was the rehearsal dinner. My mother and Callista stood at the center of the room, perfectly lit, surrounded by floral arrangements that matched the ones I had picked months ago. In Callista's hands was a wooden plaque, dark mahogany, gold inlay, etched with my parents' wedding vows and their initials. The same plaque I had custom commissioned from a local artisan, the same one I'd paid for, selected the script, the size, the stain. I had even emailed the artisan a scanned copy of Mom and Dad's original wedding program to ensure it matched. I had spent weeks on it, quietly, lovingly. And there it was, in Callista's hands, being held up like she had come up with the idea herself. The caption on the photo read, "Can't wait to surprise Mom and Dad this weekend." So grateful for all the support in pulling this off. I stared at the screen, frozen. My stomach didn't drop. My jaw didn't tighten. That would have meant I was surprised. Instead, I took a screenshot and added it to the growing folder labeled, "If They Force My Hand." 30 minutes later, Indira messaged again. "Helena, something else." This time, it was a voice memo. "I thought you should know," Indira wrote. "Your mom just told someone that you're traveling for work. She made it sound like you canceled last minute." I listened to the voice recording. It was during the rehearsal dinner, one of those in-between moments when people were milling around with drinks. A woman asked, Will Helena be here Saturday? My mother's voice, without pause, answered brightly, Oh no! She had a last-minute thing come up with work. You know how she is, always buried in deadlines, but she sends her love. Delivered with the same tone she used when asking for sweetener at brunch, smiling. A practiced, a lie, polished and placed like a flower in a centerpiece. It wasn't enough to erase me from the event. She had to create a version of me that excused her actions. A busy, self-absorbed daughter too distracted to show up. That's what she was telling people. That's what they would remember. I set my phone down on the kitchen table and stared out the window. Across the street, a kid was riding in circles on a beat-up bike. Someone's sprinkler sputtered to life in a tiny front yard, catching sunlight like shattered glass. I walked to my laptop and opened a new email. To Valora Franklin, Callista Franklin. Subject, enough. I typed, I know what you're doing. This will be the last time I let it slide. I let the cursor blink. My hands hovered over the keys. Then I deleted it. Instead, I opened 3 new drafts. One to Indira, one to the venue, one to the family friend who had asked about me at the rehearsal. Each message was polite, neutral, professional. To whom it may concern, I'm reaching out regarding recent comments and attributions connected to my name and involvement in the Franklin anniversary celebration. For clarity, I will not be attending. Any references to my attendance, sponsorship, or endorsement of the event are inaccurate and should be corrected. I hit save, not send. It wasn't time, not yet. That night, I walked into the spare room where I stored most of my event gear. I pulled the storage bins off the shelf and began sorting through them. Fabric runners, polished brass holders, string lights in tangled webs. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just needed to move, to do something that reminded me I had control over some part of this life. At the bottom of one bin, I found the original receipt for the plaque, folded neatly, still crisp. I took it back to my desk and scanned it, saved a copy, uploaded it to the folder. Then I leaned back and looked at the screen. The folder wasn't just a collection anymore. It was an outline, a record. Their version of events might be more palatable to the outside world, tidy, smiling, guiltless. But I had receipts, literal and otherwise. I glanced at the calendar widget in the corner of my desktop. 2 days until the party. 2 days for them to either stop lying or double down. I closed the lid on my laptop, stood up, and said out loud, to no one, they have 2 days left, and one chance to stop this. I didn't say it with anger, I said it with certainty. Because if they didn't, I wouldn't be the quiet one anymore. I woke up early the morning of the party, not because of excitement, and definitely not because of nerves. My body just knew better than to keep sleeping. It had always been good at warning me, even before my mind caught up. Before memory could form shape, the unease had already wrapped itself around my ribs like something ancient. The stillness in the air wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the quiet before a thunderstorm, the kind that presses on your skin, the kind where birds vanish from the trees and even the wind forgets how to breathe. I moved slowly, deliberately. There was no playlist humming in the background, no rush to get out the door. It wasn't that kind of morning. I got dressed like I was attending something important, not in anything dramatic or flashy, but with quiet intention. A crisp button-down shirt, freshly ironed, dark jeans, a black coat with clean lines and deep pockets. I pulled my hair back into a low ponytail, left my face bare. No makeup, no earrings, no armor. Just me, plain and present. I slid my phone into my pocket but didn't check it. By 9:00 a.m., I was sitting in the corner booth at the Café 2 blocks from my apartment, the one with the creaky wood floors, mismatched chairs, and a front window that caught just enough morning sun to turn the space gold. I'd come here often over the years, not to hide but to hold still, to think, to breathe. The woman behind the counter didn't ask for my name. She knew it, just handed me a ceramic mug of black coffee and smiled faintly. I didn't want cream. I didn't want sugar, just bitter clarity. I didn't check social media, didn't refresh my inbox, didn't open the folder on my desktop titled If They Force My Hand. I just sat. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. Right around then, I imagined the toast would be happening. I had written it myself, weeks ago. I had outlined the timing, built the run of show in Excel. I had color-coded it for crying out loud. I knew the schedule by heart. I was supposed to be standing in front of a room full of guests in pressed linen and expensive shoes, raising a glass, offering words that stitched the family together. Words that were always expected of me, never returned. Instead, I pictured my mother dabbing at the corners of her eyes with a linen handkerchief, overly performative, the way she always did when someone praised Callista. I imagined Callista in her cream-colored dress, shoulders back, eyes trained on the photographer, soaking in applause that was never hers alone. The camera would flash, people would clap. They would thank her for a party she hadn't planned and didn't pay for. And I? I was supposed to smile through all of it. But I hadn't gone. I was here. With coffee growing cold in front of me, then the first buzz. I glanced down at my phone. One notification, then another. A few seconds later, a third. What started as a trickle turned into a storm. Text messages, voicemails, missed calls, DMs. The screen kept lighting up like a slot machine. The vibration was constant, erratic, as if the phone itself was panicking. I didn't open any of them. Not yet. Not until I saw Indira's name. Her message was short, direct. Someone asked about the payment. I think your mom was caught off guard. I exhaled slowly, watching the steam rise from my mug. Another ping. This time from a name I recognized but hadn't seen in years. An aunt who once sent me a thinking of you card after my first apartment flood and then promptly forgot I existed. Hey, sweetheart, can we talk? Something's come up and I think you should know. My heart didn't race. There was no adrenaline spike, no shake in my hands. If anything, everything inside me stilled. The next message was longer, again from Indira. There was a mix-up at check-in. The event coordinator had Helena Roth listed as the main sponsor. It was on the printed vendor sheet by the door. A guest asked, "Who's Helena?" And the room went quiet. I closed my eyes for a beat, imagined the moment, the air suddenly heavier, my mother stammering, her expression slipping, the calculation behind her eyes spinning, trying to catch up. Callista, probably trying to smile it away, just a clerical error, or, oh, she helped a little, or maybe even a laugh paired with, she likes to stay behind the scenes. But the seed had been planted. The silence would have said enough. And the beauty of it? I hadn't said a word. They had done it to themselves. A new text from Indira. People are asking questions. Some are messaging me. Do you want me to say anything? I typed back. No, just watch. That's enough. And that was all. I turned my phone over and let it buzz against the wooden tabletop, a live wire thrumming with energy I no longer needed to hold. By 5:00 p.m., I had counted 112 missed calls. I hadn't answered a single one. I took out my phone, opened the camera, and snapped a photo of the moment. The half-full coffee mug, the golden sunlight falling across my hand, and the phone screen glowing with 112 missed calls. Then I posted it to my private Instagram story. No call-outs, no captions dripping with subtext, just an image and a sentence. This is what the too dramatic one looks like. No hashtags, no tags, just the truth. Quiet and devastating in its simplicity. That evening, I walked home slowly. The city was golden, bathed in a haze that made even construction scaffolding look soft. People passed me on the sidewalks, laughing, clutching paper coffee cups, unaware that a quiet revolution had just happened. Once home, I placed my phone on the kitchen counter and flipped it into airplane mode. It didn't deserve any more of my energy tonight. I changed into pajamas, pulled a warm blanket over my shoulders, and sat down in the living room. No lights. Just the faint hum of traffic outside, the kind that made it feel like the world kept spinning, even after truths had been laid bare. Somewhere across town, people were whispering. I imagined Valora pacing her kitchen, trying to rewrite the evening. I pictured Callista checking her phone obsessively, fingers trembling over the refresh button. I hadn't said a single word. But now, they were the ones spiraling. And I was finally still. By the time dawn arrived the next day, my inbox had become a battlefield. Not metaphorically, not figuratively, an actual digital war zone. I hadn't set an alarm, but my phone pulled me awake anyway, buzzing in sharp, uneven bursts across the nightstand like it was panicking on my behalf. For a moment, I was caught between sleep and awareness, my mind floating somewhere above my body until it all came back with a jolt. The post, the truth, the silence I had let speak louder than any confrontation ever could. I reached for the phone slowly, bracing for what I already knew would be waiting. Missed calls. 5, 6, no, 7, from Valora. 3 text messages from Jethro, each one a clipped version of the same plea. Call me Helena. A smattering of just checking in messages from cousins I hadn't heard from since Dad's retirement party 3 years ago. Their concern felt borrowed, like someone had handed them a script and they were reading from it without understanding the plot. I almost stopped scrolling. But then I saw it. A new post from Callista. A photo. Beautiful. Golden. Curated. The family lined up in front of the floral arch from the party last weekend. The arch I had designed myself. The one I had personally sourced and ordered after 3 failed vendor calls and a last-minute delivery from a supplier 2 towns over. The caption beneath it read, 3 generations of love, grateful beyond words. I tapped to enlarge the image. At first glance, it was picture-perfect. Smiles wide, dresses pressed. Everyone standing just close enough to look warm, but not awkward. But something was off. The lighting, the symmetry. The space between my niece and Aunt Lorraine seemed strange, disjointed. And then I saw it. Where I had once stood, where I knew I had been positioned for the original photo, was now empty. Not just left out, removed. My arm had been there. My shadow had cast just behind my niece's skirt. I recognized the pose, the stance, the shape, gone, cleanly erased, and not just cropped. This was surgical, AI-assisted, professionally manipulated. They had scrubbed me out, and they did it well enough that anyone who hadn't been there wouldn't notice the stitching. But I noticed. My stomach turned, not in anger, not even in sadness, but in something sharper, deeper, something that lived somewhere between betrayal and surreal clarity. Erasure. I didn't wait, didn't pause to second-guess or breathe. I got up, flicked on the kitchen light, and opened my laptop. Click, Finder window. Folder titled, If They Force My Hand, a private collection I'd kept for over a year. Screenshots, audio clips, receipts, not to weaponize, just to remember. Just in case. I dragged the newly manipulated photo into the folder and opened my email. 2. The entire Franklin family thread, BCC'd. Subject? Let's be honest for once. No greeting, no filler, no appeal to unity or family values. Just 3 attachments. The original invoice for the event, with my signature as the sole payer. The email thread confirming I had fully financed the floral arrangements and catering. A voice memo, Valora's, unmistakably, recorded during a call I'd saved for this very reason, her voice sharp and dismissive as she laughed. Let Helena think she's in charge. She always needs something to feel important. Then, beneath the attachments, I typed one line. Since truth wasn't welcome in person, here it is in writing. I clicked send. No drafts this time. No editing for tone. No soft landings. I closed the laptop and sat back, pulling the throw blanket around my shoulders. The weight of it settled over me like armor. And then, I waited. It didn't take long. The first ping came from Aunt Nancy. Helena, what? What is this? Did you really pay for all of it? Then came the flood. Why weren't you in the photo? Wait, weren't you traveling? That's what Valora said. Callista told us this was her gift to the family. Are you saying it wasn't? I didn't reply. Not one word. Let them sit with it. Let them feel what I had felt. Confused, silenced, replaced. Let them hear the echoes of the lies they had swallowed. 15 minutes later, another notification appeared. Instagram. Callista's 3 generations of love post was no longer a celebration. It was unraveling in real time. Comments had flooded in. Where's Helena? This doesn't feel right. Yikes! If you're going to Photoshop someone out, At least fix the lighting. Helena paid for that party and you erased her? Wow, this is sad. And then, finally, Indira, the cousin who had remained neutral, who had never picked sides publicly, the one person I thought might always stay silent. Her comment came like a quiet gavel drop. The woman who paid for this entire event isn't even in the picture. Think about that. Within 10 minutes, the post was gone. Deleted. But not fast enough. Screenshots were already circulating on Facebook, on Twitter, even on Reddit. The hashtags began forming. #family-fraud, #erased not broken. And still, I hadn't said a single word publicly. No caption, no reply, no defense, just the receipts. I closed the laptop and stood. I needed air. I stepped out onto my tiny balcony barefoot, the concrete cold beneath my feet. The city below was starting to stretch awake, morning traffic building, windows flickering to life. But up here, above the noise, it was calm. And then my phone rang. Valora. I stared at the screen as her name blinked. Once, twice. I let it ring out. Voicemail. I tapped to play it. Her voice, usually so composed, so carefully manicured, now trembled under pressure, tight, frantic, cracking at the edges. You've made a mess, Helena, a public one. This didn't have to happen like this. We were trying to keep the peace. You don't understand how these things work. You're going to ruin everything. For everyone. I hit save. Dropped the file into a new folder on my desktop. Evidence? Gaslight attempts. I stood for a long time, watching the sky grow brighter over the skyline. And all I felt was clarity. She called it a mess. I called it daylight. I woke up to quiet. Not the anxious kind, the kind that creeps in before something shatters, but a full-bodied, steady quiet. The kind that settles after a long storm has passed and the walls are still standing. I wasn't bracing for impact anymore. The house didn't feel like it might collapse under the weight of someone else's expectations. No more tiptoeing, no more shrinking, just stillness. My phone lay face down on the nightstand, dark and silent. No pings, no calls, no demands disguised as concern. The last thing I'd listened to before falling asleep was Valora's voicemail. I'd replayed it once, not for clarity, but to hear it exactly as it was intended. "You're a mess," she had said, with that clipped sharpness that always tried to pass itself off as guidance. But she was right about one thing. Something had been broken. Just not me. Light filtered through the slats in my blinds, a narrow gold ribbon across the hardwood floor. I slid my feet into the slippers by the bed, padded into the kitchen, and made coffee. Black, no sugar. I didn't want sweetness. I wanted strength. While it brewed, I sat at the table and opened my laptop. The plan was already mapped out. Every account reviewed. Every document double-checked. I had spent hours the night before organizing it all, not in rage, not in rebellion, but with the calm resolve of someone done explaining herself. I wasn't retaliating. I was releasing. I dialed Marcus, my financial advisor. He picked up on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. "Helena," he said gently, as if expecting this moment. "I want to pull my name from the joint property deed tied to Callista," I said, "and cancel all automatic transfers to my mother's account, effective immediately." There was a pause on the line. I imagined him leaning back in his chair, absorbing the words. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I replied, steady. "This is the last courtesy." He didn't argue, just asked for confirmation details, routing codes, signature verification. The process was clinical, clean, surgical, the digital severing of ties that had once been knotted in emotion. When the last confirmation email hit my inbox, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel regret either. I felt light, but I wasn't finished. There was still one thread left, one final knot to untie, not for them, but for me. I got up and walked to my bedroom. From the top drawer of my dresser, I pulled out a small, tissue-wrapped bundle. Inside was the vintage necklace Valora had given me for my 21st birthday, a delicate gold pendant in the shape of a key, ornate and fragile. She had called it the matriarchal token, a family heirloom passed from mother to daughter, a symbol of leadership, of responsibility, of being the one who held everyone together. At the time, I had thought it meant I was chosen, that she saw me, that I had earned something sacred. Now I knew better. It wasn't about legacy, it was about leverage. Wearing that necklace was never about being celebrated. It was about being bound to their rules, their secrets, their image. I laid it gently on the bedspread. The metal gleamed faintly in the soft morning light. Small, insignificant in size, yet heavy with years of unspoken expectations. I found a soft, velvet-lined box from my bookshelf, placed the necklace inside, and sat at my desk. I took a blank sheet of paper and began to write, not with spite, not with bitterness, but with clarity. The letter read, "This doesn't mean to me what it meant to you. Please stop using my name in your narrative. I will no longer be part of the story you tell to others." I folded the note, tucked it beside the necklace, sealed the box with quiet intention. On the shipping label, I wrote Valora's address in clean, unfaltering handwriting. No return address. At the post office, the clerk weighed the package and asked, "Would you like insurance on that?" I shook my head. "No, just confirmation of delivery." By the time I stepped outside, the sun had climbed high enough to warm the sidewalk. I felt the light on my shoulders, a kind of freedom I hadn't noticed before. Not dramatic, just real. Back home, I made tea, something floral, soothing, and sat at my desk. A single email notification appeared. The sender's name made my breath catch, just for a second. Dad. I hesitated before clicking. Helena. I saw it all too late. I'm sorry. I should have spoken sooner. Dad. There was no explanation, no excuses, just acknowledgement. And that was enough. I typed a single line in response. Thank you for saying that. Then I closed the window. As evening settled in, the lights softened to amber, then slipped into blue. I switched on my desk lamp. The soft glow filled the apartment with a kind of warmth I hadn't earned from anyone else, only from myself. I checked the package tracking. Delivered. Signed for. That was it. No reply. Not even a read receipt. I stared at the screen for a moment, then reached for my phone. I didn't refresh anything. I didn't wait. I set it down, lit a candle. The scent of lavender and cedar filled the room, slow and grounding. I opened a new journal, the first page blank, the paper cool under my fingertips. I picked up a pen and wrote, "This is where I stop carrying stories that weren't mine." I paused, read it once, then underlined it. I closed the journal and sat in the quiet, wrapped not in nostalgia or noise, but in something better, a calm that no longer asked me to explain myself. A silence that didn't feel empty, but earned. The necklace was gone. The accounts were closed. The permissions revoked. My name was no longer theirs to bend or borrow. For the first time in years, I had nothing left to lose. And even better, nothing to prove. 2 years passed before I mailed the package. I had moved to Ashland, Oregon by then, small town, quiet, surrounded by hills that turned gold in October and bled amber into the Rogue River in November. No one here knew who I was. No one whispered when I walked past. No one asked about Valora or Callista or any of the events that used to define every room I entered. That Saturday morning, I walked to the farmer's market just off Main Street. The air carried a faint chill, and the booths buzzed with early risers. I bought a loaf of rosemary sourdough from a vendor who always asked how my garden was doing, even though I never had one. A bundle of lavender went into my bag next, a little luxury I'd learned to allow myself. I wasn't free, but I was unburdened. Later that afternoon, I returned home to the small cottage I rented just outside town. The kitchen window overlooked a slope of dry leaves and pine. My life now moved at a slower rhythm, intentional, honest. No group chats, no invitations, just quiet routines and the occasional postcard from clients I still chose to work with. The photo album sat on my bookshelf. Hardbound, dark leather, no title. I had compiled it the year before, not out of nostalgia, but to finish something. Inside were photographs of every event I'd planned for my family over the last 20 years. Birthdays, graduations, anniversaries, holiday dinners, every memory they'd once pretended to own, every party they'd taken credit for. I had captioned each photo in pen. You didn't see me, but I was there. Some captions were dry, others blunt. One beneath a Christmas tree read, "I set it up. They never asked who did." A summer BBQ. Callista made a toast, I wrote. A shot of Dad in his recliner, feet propped up. He never said thank you, but I kept coming back. I wrapped the album in brown paper, taped it shut, and scribbled Valora's address on the front. There was no note inside, no return address. At the post office, I handed the package to the woman behind the counter. "Anything fragile?" she asked. "No," I said. "Just history." She smiled politely, unaware. Back home, I made tea and stood by the window, watching gray clouds gather over the hills. The day moved slowly, like most days did now. I swept the kitchen. I read a chapter of a book I probably wouldn't finish. I checked my email once. There was one unread message from Callista. The subject line just said, "Helena." I opened it. "I don't even know who we are anymore. What are we doing? How did it get like this? I missed something, but I don't know what. Or maybe I just missed pretending it was ever real." I didn't reply. I didn't even draft a response. Instead, I opened the folder on my desktop, labeled Letters from Dad. There were only 2 emails in it. The first, from the day after the fallout. The second, sent a year later on my birthday. "Helena, not a day goes by that I don't think about that night. About how quiet you were. About how long you waited to speak. I was a coward, but I'm listening now. I hope that counts for something. Dad." That email stayed starred. I reread it every October. By evening, the rain began. Not heavy, but steady. The kind that made the roof creak and the porch wood darken in patches. I pulled out the journal I'd started the night I sent back the necklace. The last entry stared up at me from the page, written in my neat slanted print. I was never the dramatic one. I was just the one who stopped pretending. I closed the book and placed it on the windowsill. Outside, the town was quiet, the air crisp. People would be lighting their fireplaces. Children would be pulling their jackets tighter. Life moved on, and so did I. They could keep their version of the story. I'd started writing mine. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is walk away in silence. Helena's story wasn't just about being excluded. It was about reclaiming dignity when those closest tried to erase it. So here's the question. Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace, only to realize you were slowly disappearing? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story struck a chord, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real-life stories that speak the truth so many of us carry quietly.